joined us yet or not, seeing him on the screen, but for those of you that had worked with Jim when he was in Mifflin County previously, he had left to go to Huntington County, has returned now as the planning director at Mifflin County, and the commissioners have appointed him as their voting member to the MPO, so we're pleased with that. We've been engaged with Jim on some things since he joined, and we're always glad to work with him when he was formerly there at Mifflin County as well. So like we've done for new members, we'll do an orientation session and try to get him up to speed with the operations and processes of the MPO and some of the priorities that'll be worked on over the next year or so. So we'll work to schedule that. I think we already have a whole date that Kristen's been coordinating with Jim on, and so we'll do that ahead of the November meeting. Anyone else? Is this your first meeting? Anyone that's joining us remotely that you'd like to introduce yourself at all, or are we all regular attendees, it looks like? Okay, we're hearing none in the room. If you can't see us through the video feed, we have Michelle Ballou, Program Assistant for the MPO, Greg Mulder, Montour County Planning Director, Lincoln Kaufman, Snyder County Planning Director, and Brad Kerstetter, Juniata County Planning Director. Bryce Buck, Program Analyst, and Kristen McLaughlin, Principal Program Analyst for the MPO. So that's who's in the room here. And if we have any more that join, we'll get them set up and renamed if they're calling in, and hopefully everybody can follow along with that. So before we dig into the rather regular items on the agenda, is there anything anybody wants to bring under the public forum? Anything that's not on the agenda or anything you want to share at this time up front? Okay, we're hearing none. Our first order of business for voting action is agenda item C. That's the approval of the July 21st, 2023 MPO meeting minutes. They're in your packet. Those of you that have the hard copy here, and online, it was in the link shared earlier this week, beginning on page 3. I will note, just on the cover page there, the attendance list, we'll make a correction that Jenny Fiegel's car was with us in person last time and not via teleconference. And so the slight modification or correction to the minutes, if that's acceptable, and then we'll get those uploaded to our website. Were there any other comments or changes anyone had on the minutes from July 21st? If not, we would look for a motion to approve the minutes with that slight correction of Jenny as being in person.
Motion to approve, Steve, with the edit.
Thank you, Brad. For the motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Lincoln. Thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Okay, thank you. That brings us up to agenda item D. This is our normal approval of all the processing of tip modifications that occurred since our last meeting was held in July. Those are in your packet, starting on page 8. The District 2 modifications run from page 8 to page 12, and there are 2 amendments, one on page 10 and one on page 12. So we'll want to cover those first. With Mark Schultz, thanks for joining us to describe those amendments, and we'll vote on those, and then a separate vote for the regular administrative modifications. So Mark, would you please give an overview of the amendments first?
Yes, thank you, Steve, and good morning, everyone. We're looking at page 10. There's an amendment on page 10 for 7. It's a high friction surface use of safety line item funds being distributed out to 2 projects. These were projects on 322, a recognition of high friction surface treatment interest on 7 mountains in the eastbound lane, and also a location on SR 333. These were projects these were sites that were part of the roadway safety review earlier this year, conducted by Kristen McLaughlin. And we're looking to have this amendment approved so that we can move forward with the the use of those safety funds for a future project that will be let earlier next year in 2024, and the treatment will be established, placed on the ground in 2024 for those safety interests. You want to move on both of those, Steve, or would you like to go one at a time?
I guess individually, if that's okay. First, are there questions, discussion about the high friction surface treatment amendment first off? Yeah, we appreciate the time that was invested in that, all the district staff, the MPO members as well. And this is a very cost-effective tool, and it's always pretty much seen as a countermeasure that works, with the HSIP funds. So there's no issue with eligibility or that kind of thing sometimes as you're identifying locations. So thanks, Mark, for you and your team with advancing that and following up on what we had reviewed with the road safety audits last year into early this year. So we'd look for a motion to approve as presented the District 2 amendment for the high friction surface treatment HSIP fund.
Motion to approve, Steve.
Thank you, Brad, for the motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Frank Hampton.
Thank you, Frank, for the second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's passed. We'll do the customary electronic step modifications after this meeting and get those processed. Thank you, Mark. Next one.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. Moving on to page 12. On page 12, you'll see an amendment. It's action ID 131960. It is for the distribution of carbon reduction funds out of the infrastructure investment reserve line item toward a future project. The future project that's been identified for use of the carbon reduction program funds is also along 322. It has been a interest of our safety unit as well, and our traffic control center, management center. It's for the future interest of display panels and 322 slow vehicle warning devices that will be established along 7 mountains, both eastbound and westbound, to alert traffic and road users that there's slow-moving traffic, potential for slow-moving trucks in those areas. The display boards will not only be for slow vehicle warnings, but also for weather-related interests, cautionary, and also for any kind of updates or detour information due to congestion or incidents out along that area.
Thank you, Mark, for that overview. Are there any questions or comments for Mark? Okay, if not, we appreciate you advancing that. And it's a good way to use these new carbon reduction funds in a quick manner, and they can go for these types of intelligent transportation systems, address congestion and safety issues. So we're glad to see that be carried out and advance through the tip here. So we look for a motion to approve the carbon reduction program funds for the Route 322 project.
Motion to approve, Steve.
Thank you, Brad, for the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Lincoln, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstentions? Great, thank you, Mark. Are there any other, the normal administrative modifications you want to highlight as well?
Let me see here. We're looking back to page 12. We have railroad reserve line item that comes out of the statewide line item. That's for Juniata County on River Road. Moving down there, we had a number of updates to a construction estimate. Then for the help to utilize those funds for a project that is now currently advertised for Mifflin County SR 1012. Looking at page 11, we were looking to, those were for adjustments on existing projects to allow for federal funds to be converted from the future federal fiscal year. And let me see, we had the roadway safety interest for that. We had on page 10, we had Twin Bridges that was also a high friction surface treatment. This is the area that is on 322 between Reedsville and Burnham. This area is currently under construction. There was an adjustment for that area to pull some funds out of that project and put them back to the line item. And moving down through, had final invoicing for the Mahantango Creek covered bridge. That was an audit of the final records so that we could balance out that construction contract. Pulled a small portion of funds of $1,700 out of that line item. And that's probably the biggest of the administrative actions, unless somebody has a question on project that they see out there.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mark at all? Okay, if none, we'd look for a motion to approve the administrative modifications as presented in your packet.
So move. Okay. Second,
Go.
Frank Hampton.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Greg, for the motion, and Frank for the second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, great. Thank you, Mark, for the rundown of those and keeping all those advancing. As we are kind of closing out the federal fiscal year here, September 30th, there's quite a few adjustments going to occur. And if you're following along your packet, you'll see John's District 3 modifications stretch from page 13 to 31. So there was a ton of activity there, John. Are there certain projects you'd like to highlight for the group that are included in the adjustments?
Good morning, Steve. Yes, thank you. I'll go over just a couple of things here, and just for the sake of my voice, I'll kind of try to paraphrase and shorten some stuff up, and everybody's time as well. If you look on page 13, the very first item you see is the amendment that was approved in May by the MPO. Again, we want to thank everybody in the MPO on the board that approved it. And then again, it took us an extra month, but we did eventually get it through PMC in July. And then I see that the FHWA received it in July as well. So that has been all taken care of. And again, thank you, everybody. Moving on, and again, I'm just going to kind of shorten things up. In the items, you will see, again, starting here, you see a railroad increase. There's another one within the actions as well. It seems the railroad also is suffering from inflation and asking for some more money. This came from the statewide railroad line item. Both of them did. Also in there, you'll see some funding called VRU funds. This was used for pedestrian countdown timers. We had some extra funding left over that we didn't need, and that's going back to the statewide line item. The other two things I'll point out kind of in general is the CRP funding that Mark kind of mentioned earlier in one of his actions. We also put the funding to two projects. The first one on a bridge and on SR 93 in Berwick, going over the Susquehanna River to upgrade the lighting on there, as CRP funds are allowed to be used for lighting upgrades from like high pressure sodium to LEDs. And then the other one is the 54090 with 642 intersection realignment project. They, after some back and forth with FHWA, they allowed us to fund the park and ride construction with CRP funds as well. The remaining actions, the majority you will see is bridge projects. Frank's been seeing a lot of them, and we're done finally. We went through our 2024 lettings, found we were roughly about 7 million under program with what we have compared to what our current estimates were as we updated everything, because we saw the inflation hit. We couldn't cover all that, so we had to defer. A few projects had to defer anyway, just because of schedule wise we weren't going to make the lettings in that year. but there were a few others that we just had to push back just because we had to utilize their funds to fund other, to fund the other the other shortfalls. So unfortunately, we're kind of seeing, inflation starting to hit us more as we kept the 23 program intact, but we kind of, by doing that, we basically sacrificed the out year stuff. So right now we're starting our adjustments to that, and it's rippling through the 2025 tip and 12-year plan update. And then at the very end, you'll see, I believe, a roadway project. And again, you'll see more of those on the next grouping we'll have for you at the next meeting. We had to, rectify our roadway program again to what we were planning on letting in 2024. We had about a $5 million overrun for that letting group. So we're also moving a couple of projects out so we can balance out what we have underfunded. And that is about it. And I'll take any questions.
Great. Well, thanks for working through that. That's the case statewide, we understand, all the other districts as well.
I know I've got a call from Kerry Mullins, who's now the planning and programming manager for District 8. And yes, he's going through the same thing as well. So I haven't talked to anybody else, but I I think District 4 is definitely going through it. And Mark, are you going through it?
We early on in 23, we went through and adjusted all of our project estimates to show a 10% inflation because we saw such increased costs on our bids in late 22 and early 23. We've already caught up to those adjustments. The concerns we have are on some of our larger projects that have multi-year. The contractors seem to be padding and still uncomfortable about their projected estimates for multi-year projects. That's where we're seeing the biggest concerns.
Thank you. Any questions for John about any of the modifications included within the packet today? These are all the lesser administrative actions, no amendments. Okay, if not, we would look for a motion to approve the District 3 DIP administrative modifications. So moved. Thank you, Greg, for the first motion. Do we have a second? Lincoln, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. And any abstentions? Okay, great. Thank you for that. Also in this section, before we get to what's in the packet, we wanted to acknowledge the TIP administrative modifications and amendments web map. Bryce has done a lot of tweaking and enhancements since the former version and now has it in the ArcGIS dashboards type platform. There's some increased filtering and sorting and other advantages of this. So Bryce is going to probably bring that up here in the screen share and do a quick overview, see if there's any questions, comments from the group, or anything you want to propose for the future. So thanks, Bryce. Just going to pull it up right now. I think I should see it. Okay, great. So unlike the last couple iterations of the web map, we moved it over to what's called a dashboard, which allows you to select certain fields from the data and filter it on the web map itself. So as you can see to the left, you can filter by action ID, action type, so amendment versus just administrative action, project stage, so like completed, future development, and development, your district and your county. Let me move this quick. On to the right here, you can search, your addresses, default views. So if you just want to see one county, you can go there. Your legend, just like last time, and you can toggle off point layers. And then also change your base map. So if you want to see, an aerial imagery or, like a Google Maps kind of thing, you have your options there too.
So to get to the actual selectors, just to give you a taste of it, you can just see everything that is in District 2 or both, or just everything in 3. So you can play around with those selectors, you know, see everything that's in development or completed, stuff like that. It's a little bit more useful from the last iterations. But I wanted to open up the floor here quick just to ask. So this data comes from PennDOT One Map system. So all of the fields that are on there can be used as a selector. So stuff like Senate districts, PA House districts, estimated construction costs, anything like that can be made into a selector. So if there's something that's, you know, useful for you or pertinent for other projects that you'd like to see in that selector system, you know, speak up now, or, you know, email me, you know, in the future here to see. I can add those to our next map. Again, this is a different URL from the last system, so just make sure, you know, you don't got those mixed up moving forward here. So that's about it from the dashboard. So
Great, thank you, Bryce. This is a really nice tool, companion to what's in your packet. You know, it can be challenging to go through, you know, just table or narrative version. So be able to click on these and pull up the actions and details and find that all here in this nice consolidated site. I think it's a really nice design. So we'll continue this. If there's things we notice as enhancement, we'll kind of work on them. But if there's things you find, as Bryce said, feel free to let us know if there's suggestions or recommendations yet.
And I forgot to mention here, when you click on the points, of course, it comes up with your different, you know, fields. And then if you zoom into any of these, you will get the actual lines from PennDOT's One Map system. So you can see the, you know, the distances of the roadways.
Thank you, Bryce. Any additional questions or comments about that? We'll continue to roll with it, and as Bryce said, the link will remain the same now, this dashboard version, but we'll highlight it in future meeting notices so you can quickly have it right there at your disposal and check those out for the tip modifications. And then you'll also have the ability to go back if you want to see what was acted on at a former meeting as well. You'll have that utility within this site as well. Within this section of the packet, page 32, we still have that table of projects that were identified as priorities but pending, you know, available funding by others. And the two main ones there are the Sealands Grove Industrial Park Road Local Access Road and the Milton Borough Local Access Road Program projects. Consulting with John in District 3, we did find out the Sealands Grove one will likely have the environmental clearance by later this year. And then hopefully they can continue to advance that with the let date. And if there's any additional, you know, funding needed for that, you know, that's brought to bear. We do know on the Milton one, what was shared, that they have a construction shortfall right now, and they're sorting through that. Obviously, there's been escalation in costs, as we've heard all across the board, and there's been some time since, you know, these projects were initially prepared and designed. So some cost increases for that Milton Borough project, I think, will be substantial. And if there's more information to share in the future, or you're interested in those, feel free to let us know, or we can get with the local project coordinator manager at the district as well. Any questions on that table or anything else related to the TIP project? Okay, well, we are speeding along to agenda item E. This is our normal CSVT project report and the State Route 54 safety project and Montour County status updates from John. And from what I had seen, there's some big news coming, John, on the CSVT Southern Section second contract. So any additional things you want to share, please? The floor is yours.
Thanks, Steve. Get right to here. Construction of the first contract, which is also known as the earthwork contract of the Southern Section that started in May of 2022 as of September 7th, is approximately 36% complete. Current work with the earthwork contract, embankment is being constructed from Sealands Grove Interchange to Mill Road, which requires a detour at Mill App and Airport Roads. There are also roundabouts that are under construction at the Mill, App, and Airport Road intersections. The western roundabout is almost complete. The eastern roundabout is prepping for concrete work and paving. They are completing large pipes north of Attig. Park Road will be under detour for a few more weeks and should reopen before the end of September. Park Road and Colonial Drive are being relocated, then Fisher Road will be detoured and realigned. The Hall Road north of 11th Avenue is being constructed. The concrete deck for the Sunbury Road Bridge is scheduled to be constructed at the end of September. And that is all I have for the first contract. And then the big news is the second contract, or the structures contract, was put out to bid yesterday, and an apparent low bid of $106,415,000 was submitted by Walsh Construction Company to LLC. And I don't have anything further on that at this time. Again, it did go out to bid and we got an acceptable bid. And Steve in the MPO, once I get our actual official press release, I'll send it to you, Steve, so you can distribute it through the MPO members, if that's okay.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Moving on to contract 3, the paving contract for the southern section is proceeding through the design phase and still anticipating a late let of 2025 or early 2026, which again will align with our expected construction start of the 2026 construction season. Then that is all I have for CSVT, and I can take any questions.
Like
moving.
Oops, sorry. The detours, how's everything operating pretty well with the detours as far as local perspective from Lincoln and also from Penn? I know there's always little hiccups and the school starts back up and everything.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're always gonna hear complaints, but I haven't heard anything major. I mean, everything seems to be going as smooth as it can.
Great. Excellent. Sorry to interrupt you there, John.
No, that's fine, Steve. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to the State Route 54 and 642 intersection realignment. Currently, the right-of-way acquisition process has started, and PennDOT right-of-way staff is working through the acquisitions with the affected property owners. And the big thing is the Community Advisory Committee update meeting has been scheduled for next Thursday, September 21st at 6:30 p.m. at the Mahoning Township Municipal Building. We will be providing an update on the status of the design as well as an overview of the proposed construction sequencing traffic control that will be utilized during construction. At this meeting, there will be the videos of how the displaced left turn lane functions. These are the same videos that were shown during the 2020 CAC meetings. And that is all I have on the 54-642 realignment.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John on either CSVT or the Route 54 safety project? Okay, thank you for those updates. That brings us up to agenda item F. That's our normal staff activities and reporting through our work program. Begins on page 34 of your packet. Several updates there and links for your reference, but I'll just highlight a couple here as we go through. We'll touch on the draft work program here in a moment, and information's in your packet, so I won't dwell on that. But for the page 35, where we talk about the TIP update, 34 and 35, there's several things that have been ongoing related to that. We'll share some more on the timeline and milestones, but just wanted to reference that this week we had hit the Interstate Steering Committee presentation. So both District 2 and District 3 did a great job highlighting what the system preservation and maintenance needs are on the interstate and getting those into the hands of the overseers at a central office level that review all these statewide and hopefully getting considerable interstate funding investments. As you know, it's difficult to carve out regional TIP funds for the interstate projects. Sometimes we have to do that, but with all the quality work that the districts do and these submissions to the central office, we usually get, substantial investments in interstate through that tip because of how effectively they manage the projects and advance those. So that'll be ongoing in conjunction with the tip, that separate interstate management tip that's prepared. On the electric vehicle charging station study, I wanted to note that we did kick that off with the Michael Baker consulting team. We had a discussion with them on August 16th. We have another meeting scheduled for next week on Wednesday or Thursday, I believe. So we'll continue that conversation. They're in the data collection mode and analysis. And we've also identified some key stakeholders for a steering committee to oversee that electric vehicle charging stations and implementation plan. Probably the first steering committee meeting will occur in mid-October. We'll get some key parties together, from utilities, state agencies, major employers, chambers, and so forth, and tourism, visitors bureaus as well. So that'll advance. We'll continue to give regular updates and reporting to the members, and feel free to let us know if you have any questions about the process or if there's things that are trickling up to you about folks that are interested in EV charging stations. We also, kind of under that bailiwick, we got some outreach from a group called CalStart about a charge at work program, and they were addressing information to MPOs to see if they could participate as part of a pledge about electric vehicle charging stations, and also to maybe receive some free technical assistance for our offices or sites as it pertains to EV charging opportunities as well. So we have a call scheduled with them for September 25th to learn more. And if any of you follow the Clean Cities program, they're kind of connected to that as well. Help us address carbon emissions and climate change, combat that. So that's on the EV side of things. On page 36, also EV related, we have the charging fueling infrastructure discretionary grant program section there. But something new has come out after we sent the packet from U.S. Department of Transportation. So we can put that link in the chat here. I'll insert that. But it's an electric vehicle charger reliability and accessibility accelerator notice of funding opportunity. So where there's been charging stations deployed, maybe they're out there for 10 or so years and there's some failure of the equipment or the charging units themselves, there's a special program to address those. So not for brand new installations, but repairs or fixes maybe to existing charging stations. So we'll put that out there if it's of interest. States, local governments are eligible project sponsors. And it's got that accelerator in the title, which I see that more and more. I'm not sure the rest of you monitoring it, but accelerator seems to be the buzzword of the day. It's in everything. And also the U.S. Department of Transportation has shared a Thriving Communities Grant Program, technical assistance, notice of funding opportunity with us recently. That runs through November, but we'll share that link in the chat here as well during the meeting for those following along and want to check that out. And we'll update our normal staff reporting for you as well on that. Page 37 of the packet, just a nod again to the Green Light Go program. Projects were approved for Danville Borough and Middleburg Borough, so we'll continue to see more on those, and those appear on the tip modifications. And if there's anything you have questions about pertaining to those projects, let us know. We can coordinate with PennDOT, and hopefully those will be advancing and get out the bid and get those signal upgrades occurring. On the PennDOT multimodal side, we had shared with everyone the list of approvals from the last PennDOT round, and what we've heard is the next application round will probably open up in late September. So we'll get those announcements, notifications, and make sure we share that out with the larger group and all the MPO members for your information. And I would guess we probably still see in the range of 8 to 12 applications for our region. We'll go through and support and comment on those. The DCD multimodal had closed July 31st. We don't receive usually as much information about that from sponsors, but sometimes they try to go for both PennDOT and DCD, or maybe they're going for TA set aside right now and the DCD multimodal. So where those kind of complementary things are occurring, we'll take note of that. But those typically come out at the November CFA board meeting on the approval. So we'll monitor that and share it with folks as any of those come online. Kristen is now okay for, since TA set aside right there, to kind of talk about the schedule and how things are proceeding with that, with the application.
Sure. So there have been 10 pre-applications that were submitted. I anticipate that all of those will probably go to full application submittal, which is due today. And most of the counties in the region had some project in there. There's some great projects in there, and it's really exciting to see where those will go after they are due today. Probably, I think next week we'll be getting access to those. And then for anyone on the call that particularly is an applicant, we're having on October 27th, it's a Friday, we're having a little presentation piece to this where each of the applicants will come to we're having it at the Union County Government Center here in Lewisburg. Will come and give a little presentation on their projects and answer any questions. Certainly all members of the MPO are going to be invited to that, and we'd love to have you participate and give any feedback or ask questions on those particular projects.
What was the date of that, Kristen?
Sure, so go ahead, sorry.
What was the date of that?
October 27th.
27th, okay, I missed that, thank you.
And we'll probably start early in the morning, and I think is it 10 to 15 minutes presentation, so probably scheduling them every half hour. So I anticipate it'll just take up the morning that day. So, and then from there, we'll provide the comments, which will be reviewed by the MPO here at the November meeting, and then provide those to PennDOT by the beginning of December.
Great, thank you, Kristen. Yeah, I know some of you have been notified about those as they were being worked on, or getting support letters or consistency letters for your comprehensive plan. So thanks for what you've done for those, and the calls that I was able to hit and participate in, sound very good, and some competitive applications going in. Hopefully we'll see our fair share of investments from the TA set aside statewide consideration, and your participation on October 27th would be great. You can do it in person. That kind of interaction with the presenters, I think, would be great over at Union County Government Center, but it'll be hybrid. So if you can't, or you're unable, or whatever happens that day, you have to do it virtually. We'll have this Ring Central system set up as well for that on the 27th, and your chance to speak to the sponsors, learn a little bit more outside of what's explicit in the applications, and ask your priority questions. And then that process, what's recommended, will go to the full November MPO meeting for endorsement, as Kristen said, for what we provide to PennDOT. Next here, moving on to page 38, I wanted to touch on what's called TSMO, the Transportation System Management and Operations Initiative. Each TIP update, there's a capital line item for those types of projects that address safety and mobility needs, and they're listed in the regional operations plan, such as what we have, the multi-district with districts 2, 3, and 9 covered by our region. And so coordinating with District 2 staff, their folks were able to develop 4 applications. We peel one off the top as a top tier priority. It was included earlier in your packet, and we had discussed as the carbon reduction program funded project for the slow moving vehicles. But we had 4 projects that were submitted ahead of the August 31st deadline. You'll see those listed there in priority order with those bullets. Road weather information system near Thompsontown on Route 22-322, Route 220 corridor, closed circuit television cameras and dynamic message signs near Mill Hall. Route 64, dynamic message sign near I-80 in Clinton County, and then the Interstate 80 integrated corridor management system. And that would involve master signal controllers, I believe, command and control for those, closed circuit television, and I think some dynamic message boards as well. But that's a bigger ticket, costlier item, so that's why that just fell a little bit on the order there. But hopefully we'll see 1 or more of these projects approved from the $10 million per year line item for this initiative. So we wanted to acknowledge that, and Mark and Jim Roman at District 2, appreciate all they did to advance this and and get these in for submission for the capital funding program. Any questions on those? Okay, if not, I'll just mention that those of you who played along in the past on the regional operations plan, there will be an update. We're in that cycle where that'll be updated probably starting early next year. So we'll be reaching out to you as there's information and meetings or calls being scheduled about that. If there's other safety, mobility concerns you want to see factored into that operations plan, we'll make sure we're sharing that information as quickly as possible. On page 39, the highway performance monitoring system samples. As we had mentioned before, there's been a move to a mobile application for that, which will make it much more efficient. And Bryce has gotten up to speed and done a sample review of Montour County with the PennDOT staff and found a few things, and they've been tweaking and making that better. So we're excited about that. It'll help with that sampling for the highway performance monitoring system. The data that goes in and is used all across the different systems within PennDOT. And so that'll occur over the next couple months and is due by the first week of December for all those submissions. But with the electronic and the application now, it'll really be sped up and accelerated, and just even arranging your day for the visits is much more efficient now as well. On the GIS intern, we did advertise with area universities and some other sites looking for a GIS intern for the fall as the universities return back into their fall session. We had a couple of nibbles or bites from some interested prospective applicants, but we haven't seen any full applications come in yet. So just put that out there. If you know of any college students or other folks that would be interested in a GIS internship, feel free to let us know or forward them the advertisement if you want to get it from us and share it with them as well. It can be a great opportunity and some really good things that we have for learning objectives for them, and it's a paid offering, so that's always nice to have an internship that's paid. So if we learn more, we'll share that in the coming months, or if there's things that you have GIS wise that you'd like to see us support with your counties, let us know. And I think finally on LTAP, Don Keel could not be with us today due to an LTAP event, but I wanted to acknowledge our annual report went in and we copied the members on that for LTAP covering the 22-23 statistics and activities. Its link is there in your packet as well on page 40. There's 2 new LTAP courses in development right now, one on GIS for municipalities and local governments, and one on drones. So our staff has been involved in pilots of that and helping shape those courses. So we're excited about that. And as we shared, we had added a drone to our tool set in the past couple months, and Bryce is going through some of the training and certification process for that. And we'll be able to use that for our transportation program in the coming months and years. And then finally, the chainsaw safety workshop was held since our last meeting. And that's our special arrangement we do with Penn College of Technology. That's a really good session, a good supplement to our equipment operator training. And that went well. That was in late July. And the expectation is we'll do that again next year. So if your local governments have folks that need that hands-on equipment operator training or chainsaw safety training, feel free to send them our way. There's been a lot of turnover in public works staff, so we think this is a vital component of our LTAP program functions. The TA set-aside updates are in the packet. I'll just note on page 41, the only outstanding from 2018 is the North Branch Canal Trail levee top in Danville Borough, and the preliminary engineering is still advancing on that one, and that will be advertised. You see there on the estimates, and hopefully maybe they'll exceed that. And the 2021 round of TA set aside, Bald Eagle Valley Trail advancing and might potentially be obligated late this year and advertised for construction as well. So that'd be nice to see that. And along those side of things, we did collect our trail counter units we've been discussing. They were out for the first round on the Dales Ridge Trail, the Watsontown Towpath, and Milton State Park. So Bryce is working through that, the analysis, but he also went out and deployed for the second stage of that trail counting program 4 units on the Bald Eagle Valley Trail, since they have substantial segments that are open, and then 2 on the Lock Haven Riverwalk. So we're excited to continue that initiative, and we can report that data as it comes in. And then the second from the last round was the Market Street streetscape in the city of Sunbury, there as well. I won't dwell on the other stuff unless there's questions. We have the normal highway occupancy permit activity and traffic impact studies that are being submitted to PennDOT, starting on page 44. And the traffic impact study scoping application's been a fair amount of those submissions over the past couple of months. With a lot of new projects going in, whether they be convenience stores or commercial businesses or industrial on there. Sometimes just cleanup of access into existing sites as well. So any questions on those materials? If not, the final one in this section, page 47, I just wanted to have that in there for your information whenever we're kind of providing letters on behalf of the MPO. We want to make sure we're doing that if the timing doesn't fall in line with the meeting, and that's what occurred for this one, since we had met on July 21st. But on the 25th of July, we provided a support letter that was requested by PennDOT going after the wildlife crossings pilot program, U.S. Department of Transportation discretionary grant to develop a strategic plan for the state and also a analysis tool that could be used. So we were glad to see PennDOT was thinking of that and preparing that. Hopefully that'll be funded and that'll help to prioritize where we have a lot of wildlife crossing crashes or impacts in the state. We can identify those as potential grant applications in the future, and just having that kind of data tool that we can refer to will be helpful. So any questions on the staff activities or any of the normal work program functions? Okay, hearing none, we're up to agenda item G, and that's the draft complete streets policy. Kristen will kind of give an update, and then if Michelle Brummer joined us online, if there's anything you want to pair off of that with Michelle, please feel free to do so. But first, Kristen.
Sure. So as we discussed last time, there's a couple of different components of this project. The first is an MPO policy for adoption, hopefully in November. We anticipate that will be provided to us by Gannett Fleming in the next week or so. We had some revisions to their initial draft, and so they were fixing those revisions, and we hope to have that more final draft next week, as I mentioned, and we'll circulate that with enough time prior to the November meeting for everyone to review and hopefully get us any comments before the meeting that we can address and hopefully adopt that in November. There is also going to be a sample template for municipalities that are interested in implementing complete streets within their communities. It's going to be pretty high level in order to address both rural, suburban, and town community contexts. So as you know, most of our municipalities, if they aren't a core community, have that wide range of uses within their municipality. So this will hopefully get at addressing all of those aspects, and it's just a template that anyone could use to implement that. Also, Bloomsburg was provided some direct technical assistance on their petacycle ordinance, which will hopefully be wrapped up also next week. And the outcome of that, the idea is once Bloomsburg gets that adopted, that we'll be able to share that for any other MPO members that are interested in providing that to municipalities and communities or anything like that to adopt the petacycle ordinance. And lastly, there will be an update to the MSATC matrix, which will be based on consultation with the counties. So anticipate that someone from Gannett Fleming will be getting in contact with you probably next month, I would anticipate, or November, to get that matrix updated for projects that have been implemented or moved forward and new projects that we want to add to that list. That's where we're at right now with complete streets. If anyone has any additional questions, I don't see Michelle on there, so
thank you, Kristen. Yeah, this is again how we're using the new increasing safe and accessible transportation options funds, part of that for this complete streets policy. And there's not really a lot of examples or a lot's been done in Pennsylvania at an MPO level. So we had a few comments and edits and revisions, as Kristen mentioned. Dan Fleming's working through, and we'll make sure, like you said, to get that draft out to you well in advance of the November 17th meeting for your review and digestion before we would entertain a motion to approve that. We could always amend it in the future as new things come up, new initiatives and other items or processes or procedures we want to follow, but we think that'll be good. And to get a template for municipalities within central Pennsylvania here, I think will be a nice item to recommend for their consideration as well. So that will continue with the Gannett Fleming team. Also, we do have them now on a work order for the strategic plan update. Our current strategic plan for the MPO is from 2019. Several of you were involved with that. We had the typical kind of surveying, retreat or forum held, and we established what those priorities were for the MPO and what should be fed into the long range plan or normal work program. So since there's been a fair amount of turnover of those since then, and there's been new federal legislation and the CSVT projects advancing and so forth, we thought it was worthwhile as we were kind of in that 5-year update cycle for the strategic plan. So we're going to work with the Gannett Fleming team to update that document and be kind of our launching off point for our next long range plan update as well. So stay tuned. There'll be some more coming out from that. We'll be sharing the schedule and some of the key points for engagement and involvement with the MPO members on that strategic plan. And that should wrap up by probably late spring of next year, I would imagine. Thank you, Kristen. New item here, agenda item H, is our draft fiscal year 24 to 25 work program. If you'll recall, we made the changeover several years ago, I think back in 2014, to do a 2-year work program. That was nice to kind of have that stability and for your tasks and everything. They were in your work program to advance and for the funding side as well. But for the next fiscal year 24-25, PennDOT and Federal Highway Administration recommended we do a single year to get us off cycle with the TIP. As you know, there's a lot of intense development and reviews that go into the TIP process. So they wanted to try and get the work program development off cycle from that. And so that's why there's this bridge interim year of going to a 24-25 work program, and then we'll return to a 2-year program again in the future. But it was lessen a little bit some of the development time and all the reviews that need to be done by all the parties of each individual TIP and work program across the state. So that was the kind of justification of the reasoning behind this. And we do not have the formal guidance or the budget numbers yet for fiscal year 24-25, which will start following the state fiscal year of July 1st, 2024, and run through June 30th of 2025. But we just have to be determined or placeholders in your packet there.
Steve.
Page. Oh, sorry, was there a comment, Frank?
Hey, Steve. I was just going to give you an update. I got it from Karen Russell today. That's been through PennDOT, that interim guidance that you're talking about. It's moved through PennDOT. It is now in the hands of Federal Highway, so we're a step closer.
Great, thank you, Frank, for that. Yeah, we didn't expect a ton of changes. Yeah, there's a few things maybe from the bipartisan infrastructure law, but we thought a lot of this would still hold. We made the typical modifications for key activities that were done during the 22-24 work program, identifying some things that we know are going to be deliverables or action items for 24-25, but we didn't expect a ton of revisions that were going to be needed coming out of the guidance. But once we have that, we'll make sure we plug it in, things that are new, and once we have those fiscal numbers. So thanks for letting us know it's proceeding, and it's at Federal Highway. So the way the document is normally arranged, it has kind of the background information at the beginning, introductory details there that you'll see, and then it digs into the individual tasks. We made that move several work programs ago to kind of consolidate and go to the main tasks 1, 2, and 3. So those are our plans and programs that the staff does on behalf of the MPO, and all the data tools and analysis, the GIS level work, data collection, public engagement, virtual public involvement, all that type of stuff in task 2. And then task 3, the administration of all the work orders and agreements and invoicing and all that activity. Then our LTAP for the normal local technical assistance program, training, technical assistance and reporting. And then we have the line item, what we call the supplemental 2 for the plan updates and supports. So that's how we're able to set aside funds for our consultant teams like Michael Baker, International, and Gannett Fleming for special studies and updates that need to be done. And then we have the new, as we talked about, increasing safe and accessible transportation options for complete streets funding. And then if there are additional supplemental studies that folks would want to see or pursue, you can feel free to let us know. We'll have an opportunity most likely to be able to submit those as special supplemental studies, usually things that link transportation and land use, whether it's part of a corridor study, an interchange study, county comprehensive plan for a transportation element, things of that nature. But on the overview, I wanted to highlight page 55 and the background section. We try to call out some bullets there for where staff is desired to participate in local planning processes or support other studies within the region. So there's a yellow highlight there toward the bottom. If the counties know they're going to be developing a new comprehensive plan, if there's hazard mitigation plans that you think are worthwhile, stormwater studies, whatever the case may be, feel free to let us know anytime between now and October, late October. We'll make sure that we plug that into here as well. If there's other kind of localized studies or plans for your municipalities you think would be beneficial for us to be a part of, let us know. We can kind of highlight those in that section as well. Same for the districts. If there's certain initiatives that you see we're not highlighting there, we do call out some of the slide studies and the wetland bank studies and continuing the Central Susquehanna Valley transportation study and the ensuing fallout Route 15 corridor study there, and also the Route 522 roundabout study for what's coming out of the former corridor study that was done by Michael Baker team for us there. So if there's other things you think are worthwhile, let us know. We'll make sure we insert those. And then we updated the table, page 57, of all the plan activities, so you can kind of see what our currency is on our adoption dates, when the next adoptions or completions are due, and what our timetable is to commence work on those. Those are always key to be tracking and following. And then on page 58, probably the final thing I'll highlight is just some of the things we established as major priorities for this 24 to 25 work program. There'll be an update to the region's long-range plan. That'll be expiring in June of 2026, but you have to start the update process 30 months in advance. So there's a lot that goes into that. We'll be needing to kick that off next year. The electric vehicle charging station study and implementation plan that's underway now. We'll want to support the recommendations in that and see those advance. And then continuing all our work with the Active Transportation Committee and that bicycle pedestrian plan, potentially maybe sections of that being updated or the entire one to be considered. And then just following through on the heels of recent studies to recommend or implement those recommendations, whether they're the CSVT, other PennDOT Connects funded studies like the Route 522 or Hogan Boulevard or the Danville Area Transportation Study. And then during this work program, we got to start some of the early work for the 2027 Transportation Improvement Program. That's always a major undertaking. And also our kind of multimodal side of things, continue to support our transit operators with their needs and any new initiatives that might be popping up, microtransit or other fixed route studies or park and ride lots like we talked about earlier with John, to make sure we're actively supporting those multimodal public transportation and bicycle pedestrian type projects. So we wanted to get this draft out now of what we had, see if there's any comments. We'll need to forward it off to PennDOT, Federal Highway Administration, after today's meeting for their review and comment. And then November is when we would need to get adoption, because it has to occur by January, but November would be our last meeting of the year. So between now and then, if you have suggestions, let us know if you think we're missing anything at all on any of the tasks or descriptions or priorities, and we'll revise that accordingly, and we'll share this with PennDOT Federal Highway for official review before we bring it back for November adoption. Any questions, comments from anyone about the work program?
Hey, Steve, this is Frank.
Yes, Frank.
Just a quick question, just as a reminder. From that February awards announcement for the Straight Streets for All for SEDA COG, just making sure we're keeping track of that, that's all.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's a separate department that is working on it for the city of Shamokin. And I'm not sure where all the agreements and all that kind of thing stand right now, but hopefully that is being plugged away on, and that'll be something that they would be eligible then for capital or infrastructure type projects in the future.
I would ask that you'd keep John Rank involved, because he just got tapped yesterday from upstairs here to see what is the current status as far as within MPMS, a project for placing the funds and things of that nature. So just keep him involved, please.
Sure, yeah, thank you. And Kristen, do you have anything?
I believe they're issuing an RFP.
Okay, great, thank you. If you were able to hear Kristen, she said there should be an RFP going out shortly for consultant assistance, I think, for the study and design work on that.
Thank you, Kristen.
Sure.
Great, thank you, Frank. And that's for Independence Street. If you haven't been following along over in the city of Shamokin, they've been doing a lot of upgrades there throughout the city, bicycle, pedestrian wise, streetscape wise, park and recreation, pocket parks and that type of thing. So we'll plug back into that and monitor the status and keep John engaged as well. Okay, well, if anything springs to mind, feel free to let us know, but that will be the core of what we have for July 1, 2024 to June 30, 2025, and then we'll make sure we integrate what comes out of the official PennDOT guidance between now and November. Thank you, everyone. We are up on agenda item I, the 2025 12-year program update. Within the pack, we just have one item. It's kind of the typical graphic that we do of the timeline for the TIP development. So you can kind of see where we currently are and stand. And I'll just highlight a couple things here. I talked about the TISMO applications. Those were due the end of August. Submitted that. That's kind of one of the things factored into the 12-year program update. There's also the Highway Safety Improvement Program set aside round. Those are open through the end of September, and the districts primarily coordinate those. They have all the best information, the data, and the way to justify those with the forms that are going in. So those will occur with the deadline September 30th. Interstate projects are being entertained or reviewed, as I mentioned, and also anything on a statewide level that requires some extra funding outside of the regional allocation. Those normal kind of spike type projects, as they're referred to, are being reviewed, and probably come December is when we'll hear approvals on all those, I believe, to allow us to get those fed into the TIP development listings and everything. So hopefully those all come together, the TISMO, the Safety Improvement Program, and the interstate and statewide discretionary type projects in December. We've been meeting with the districts regularly. We've had 2 coordination meetings, another one on September 26th to talk about the draft TIP. A lot of that was geared toward carryover projects, estimates, some of these line items like the carbon reduction program, the safety funds, and the local bridge prioritization, as we've been working on since the beginning of the year, and Bryce will have some more on that in a moment. But we'll continue to work through that process, and then hopefully be able to bring a first draft to the MPO members at the February meeting. You'll see on the schedule later on, we're proposing an early February meeting. That would be the first draft at an MPO meeting, and then the second draft in April, and that is when we would look to have the draft TIP approved for going out for comment, with a public meeting in May and the comment period concluding in May as well, to allow us some time to compile those, respond to any commenters, and get that before the members for an adoption of the draft TIP at the June MPO meeting. There'll also be the normal kind of stuff that needs to occur, environmental justice analysis, looking at the benefits and burdens of the TIP projects on low-income and minority populations, and also PennDOT Connects forms for the new projects that aren't currently on the TIP. Those would need to be prepared, and then the consultation with any local governments that want to have input on those as part of the forms. So those are some of the big things related to the TIP. As I said, we have another coordination meeting later this month with PennDOT and Federal Highway Administration. And then for November, what we're able to bring in terms of new project listings, we'll be sure to present that to you and have that included in your packet as we're able. And then we'll march forward to your first draft listing for the February meeting. Also, I'll mention the State Transportation Commission. That public survey is still open. We do have the results that were shared by PennDOT, and Bryce is doing the kind of clustering analysis on those from the past 2 rounds to see where we have clusters of similar type projects and things that maybe aren't currently listed on the TIP, or they should be integrated into a TIP project. So that's ongoing. And then the State Transportation Commission will do an additional public comment period once the drafts are all out there statewide. And the survey, I think, is open still through the end of September. It's kind of a new thing they did this time to have that extended. So if anybody's still visiting the site, or if you thought of something after the April closure of that unofficial closure, it's still out there for taking the survey and submitting any priorities that way. So any questions on the 12-year program, TIP development process and timeline? If not, one of the core things that's been occurring on that, as you know, each round is the local bridge prioritization, what updates there are for the projects on that listing as they may change, or new ones that are being proposed and looked at for funding, and what goes into that vetting process and the scoring and surveying. So Bryce is going to highlight what begins on page 80 of your packet.
So happy to report that this round of the TIP local bridge prioritization process analysis has been completed and is ready for approval for submission to PennDOT during today's meeting. But before we do that, I'd like to share a little presentation about the overall process and what we did to come up with that analysis. So go first. So the purpose, as you all know, is to compile a listing of local bridges that can be provided to PennDOT as candidates for funding on the next TIP cycle. We've already done our priority meetings with our member counties, data collection and GIS analysis and quality checks through us and through PennDOT. And that just leads us to our approval. Our original plan here is highlighted with the black cells. This is what we've done in the past, but due to my position here and starting last December, that moved around a little bit with the data analysis and data collection. So you can see the gray there is what was previously decided, and the reality of the situation, coming in with pretty much just a bigger data analysis as we got data flowing in from the member counties. Scoring was based on county meeting discussions and inspection reports by the counties and engineering partners, priority listings from the same groups, our survey results, and thank you to all of those who filled those out back in April and May, and the overall GIS analysis. So it came out to 8 scoring criterion that you can see there. Each of those came up with a score based on certain alternatives, and each of those 8 were added together to produce the graphs that you see on page 82 and 83, respectively. So I'm going to go through each of those big scoring criteria just to give you an idea of how the scores, were calculated. Anything in brackets up at the top there is what showed 82 and 83 up in the graph, or up in the table, and then also in the graph below. I apologize for the paper copies. The colors don't really show well, but I'll show them here in a couple minutes. So the first priority was essentially just assessing whether or not the county thought the local bridge was a top priority to reconstruct or rehabilitate. And you get a score there from 0 to 0.242. These values came from a decision lens program that were decided, a couple cycles ago. Steve, if you want to talk about that more, if anybody has questions on how those numbers came to be,
Yeah, feel free to let us know. It was a kind of the weighting process that was established before with the votes that went into that, and how that's meted out with the decision lines platform is entered in there. So if there's changes, if you see anything here with the criteria you think one isn't as important anymore, if there's new things that need to be added, feel free to let us know. We want to make sure it's most reflective of what you think are the top tier priorities to go through and establish these bridge rankings.
And I'll reach out after the meeting here, after the whole process, with a survey or something, that just make sure that we're all on the same page with these scoring values. So the next one was strategies. This is just considers if there's an innovative strategy, such as bundling, retro reimbursement, or cast concrete purchase from PennDOT. This is only one alternative too, so it's a yes or no. So if you used a strategy, you get that 0.088 value. The next one's also just a single alternative. It assesses whether your local bridge is located on dead end, and how many residences are located within its service buffer. The more residents you get, the higher the score you get. The next one would be potential for future development. So this is anything related to your zoning classification of the local bridge. Whether surrounding the local bridge you can have high density, residential areas, industrial facilities, restaurants, stuff like that, as well as the county opinion on future development. So that's where the survey came in, super important. And you can see those scores at the bottom there. Next one was bike ped. So just another survey response on whether or not the local bridge was used as a recreational, non-recreational bike ped use. And those are scores for those two alternatives. The next one was the biggest one. This was essentially just a GIS analysis. It looked to assess whether the local bridge serves local facilities and important public areas. So it serves industrial area. That was calculated through zoning. The area was zoned industrial. Next one was served an activity center. So if there was a government building, a school, place of worship within its service buffer, that counted as a yes to that alternative. Road connections, that was based on what PennDOT road system you're on, local road or state road. EMS provider impacts, that was used through a tool with RPS Pro. If the bridge was closed, it would see where the closest EMS provider was, and if the bridge closure would impact the service time of the EMS provider. The next one was water and sewer service, public water sewer service areas. Those are just polygons on the map. If the bridge was located in that area, it got a positive score. Active cultivation, essentially just if there's active agriculture in your area, you're going to get more points. And then also the presence of a dry hydrant. Next one was bridge info. Just if, basic characteristics, if the bridge was functional, it wasn't, if it was functionally obsolete, you got your positive points. And then covered bridge was a non-factor, but if you didn't have either of those two, you got a positive score. And our last one was resiliency. So scour critical, if there was a history of closure, overflow, and if it was located on an evacuation route. And all of those scores came to create what you see in your packet. With those 8 criterion that we just went over at the bottom, and you can see how they add up for each of the local bridges. So here's the one for District 2, and then District 3. And then we use these values, the added up values, to make the final ranking list, which you can see on the previous page. I believe we have page 80 and 81. 80 is District 2 and 3, and then 81 is the 2 and 3 combined, just to see how they rank up. So those are our listings. And just for what's next in this process, before we get to voting to send it to PennDOT, I just want to know what everyone's interest level is in, reviewing the scoring process, reevaluating the scoring process, like we mentioned before, just to see if those criterion can, you think one's more important than the other and how they add it to those scores. And just interest in any follow-up meeting with me and Steve, just to, talk about it. So if you have any questions or concerns with the scoring process, please bring them up now.
I don't have any problem with the scoring process. I think it always does us well from time to time to review the process.
Yeah, that would be great.
So
yeah.
it's not necessary that, as this has just been done for this year,
Mhm.
that we would do it now, but going forward, it's always positive to review the process.
Mhm. So since this is made through Decision Lens, they have a fun tool where I can put all those criterion and all of their attributes, and you can go in and say, oh, this one's more important than the other one. And that will change those values that you saw, through the bottom here.
Right.
So those zeros to like 0.41s. I think that's important, at least getting a timely update on those as well. So.
Yeah, we also have, Mifflin County is doing a capital bridge plan right now. They were kind of using ours as a base, so we can coordinate with them and see if there's things they were modifying with their bridge engineer that maybe we should take a look at revamping. And also the Northern Tier Rural Planning Organization, based up in Towanda, they kind of used ours as a base as well. So we could consult with them and see if they found something that was working better for their areas, that we may want to emulate or tweak in the process as well. Those are two current ones that we know that they've been doing, a newer look at the criteria and everything. So those are worth consulting along with anything else that springs to folks' minds on it.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see if they have any other, criteria that aren't included in ours, that we could potentially add to, make it a more fulfilling process than what's currently listed.
That made me sound a little bit dumb, but what, in the type, what is RR and BOF?
Yes, Steve?
The retroactive reimbursements you're looking at, those are best case for that.
Okay.
And then the bridge off federal aid system, those are more your more high cost project. The retroactive, usually you're not going to do a real expensive. It's going to be an 80-20. They're going to advance it, upfront with the local funds, and then seek the reimbursement through the tip. So usually those are lesser tier, rehabs and repairs, and the normal BOF is your typical, more expensive culverts and bridges.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we always appreciate the time, what's invested in this. We know it's a lot for you all to come together and review and evaluate, and appreciate all your bridge engineers, what they bring, with their local knowledge and inspection. We have some awareness from the region and some of these specific locations, but what they bring through the process, and then Bryce, what he's able to do with the GIS and do that way. There's some things that are a little bit subjective sometimes, and your local information on the land use is always pivotal as well, and the priority for it is substantial biking and walking along these bridges that we're not aware of. Those things are always good to put in through the process. And then obviously your top tier county 1, 2, 3 priorities, sometimes those can change. There can be new things happen locally, new events and incidents and weather damages and things like that. So it's good to kind of know where your top 3 shake out each go around. We did receive some comments from Brian Miller on the list at PennDOT District 3 about some updates. We tried to put, if projects were far out on the current program, throw them back into the mix if they needed to compete, or there was just some early study or PE work assigned to them. But Brian did note some of those that were programmed, and probably we don't really need to fully look unless the counties tell us that something has changed and they don't recognize it as a priority anymore. But there's some that are already programmed some that have been, in the rehabilitation process, or there's some minor repairs underway. So we do have those responses from Brian. Miller at District 3, and then also District 2. I know Mark Schultz with your folks were looking at the top bridge listing as well by county, and kind of your bridge care and those risk assessments and everything. So the districts are pivotal with what they're looking at and seeing in their systems as part of this as well. But the main intention is for this list to be submitted after endorsement today and be considered for the new projects to add to the TIP. Maintain what we have unless we're told otherwise, what's already programmed on the TIP and the 12-year program, but that these would be top tier candidates where we can slide in for new funding based on what the scoring process revealed here. So at that point, Mark or John, do you have any additional comments at this stage of things before we would move toward with voting and submission of the recommendations to your offices?
Steve, this is Mark. I just wanted to add that this is a great tool to identify where the needs are. And because of the effort of SEDA COG to go forth with this, to communicate with all of the local municipalities, this is a step ahead from any other areas that allow for ease of project selection, ease of funding support, ease of getting tip dollars out to local municipalities and supporting the local communities. And that's really, we're hearing more and more of a need there, and this directly supports that. So I applaud you for that effort.
Thank you, Mark.
And again, adding on with Mark, again, this does make our life a lot easier when we're developing the TIP. On the district side, the one thing I just comment on is, we're going to vote on this here, or we're going to, with these groupings of projects eventually, if not today or whatever, just that the counties are understanding this is what we're going to use, and if when we have the TIP finalized and brought it forth to you all, that it's not, I'm going to say this basically, kind of roughly, don't come crying about something you didn't or didn't get added on. If this is what you want, then this is what we'll, me and Mark will definitely try to get programmed. But if you are not sure, make sure you are, because we're going to program what is on these lists, because this is your recommendations. And I don't like to have it brought back in to my face that something wasn't caught or whatever when we're going over these so succinctly that it should have been known. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, I realize, things can be kind of fluid, or there's emergencies that pop up, but otherwise, with the level of investment everybody puts in the process, we certainly want to try and follow this and appreciate what the districts do and evaluating, reviewing these, and relying upon them for the TIP development. We're glad it's helpful for you.
And more importantly, Steve, I wanted to, commend Bryce. This was a heavy lift. It was a good job. It was a great presentation. Obviously with the caveats John was talking about, but welcome to transportation planning, bud. We take a beating all the time.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank again everybody who took the time in the meetings, just to supply data afterwards, fill out the surveys. That was a big help, and new to the process, so I appreciate everyone's flexibility with it.
Thank you, everyone, for the input. And there's continued enhancements like anything. We're always look to that, so we can follow up after this process concludes and see if there's any changes or revisions. Like we said, we can touch base with some other parties and see about their scoring mechanisms, if there's anything that we should factor into ours as a result of that. But otherwise, these are what was identified and submitted, and we would look to defer to them as the priorities for this draft 2025 to 2028 TIP development cycle. So if there aren't any additional questions, we would look for a motion to approve formal submission of the priorities to PennDOT coming out of today's meeting for the draft TIP.
So moved.
Great. We have a motion by Lincoln. Thank you for the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Brad. Thank you. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great. Thank you, everyone, for all your participation throughout and your review of that here today. We'll follow up accordingly and make sure that that's relied upon as we continue to develop the tip. Next also is Bryce for the updates on the Active Transportation Committee.
Yeah, so our big one here is Corey Ellison is stepping down from her position as Executive Director of the Susquehanna Greenway Partnership, which has been a central co-partner in the progress of the Middle Susquehanna Active Transportation Committee. So she'll be departing at the end of this year, and they're currently searching for a replacement for that Executive Director position. This new replacement will overlap with Ellison's about last month of her time with the partnership. She's mentioned that they still plan on remaining committed to the MSATC and will hold that vice chair position with the committee after her departure. Second one is, as Steve mentioned before, with the trail counting cycle, we finished that up back last month, and we'll be getting the preliminary data for that program for 2022 to 2023 out to the MPO members. So if you're interested in that process, this program in its entirety, please reach out to me after the meeting. And then, as mentioned previously during past MPO meetings and MSATC meetings, I've been working on Esri Hub website for the committee, kind of just act as a repository for all of its information, maps, meeting notes, all of the above. So I'm learning HTML, coding language used to make those websites. So as I go along, so it's a pretty slow process, but I've completed its main, skeleton, backbone of its creation. So I'm just waiting to have the time to populate it with, information. So I'm hoping to get that shared with everybody, sometime early next year. So look out for that. And then our next meeting will be November 15th. If anyone's, interested in joining for the next meeting who isn't a part of the committee already, please reach out to me. And then lastly, Pennsylvania celebrates PA Trails Month this month, September. So time, go out, enjoy our, I think, 12,000 plus miles of trails in the Commonwealth. So just wanted to bring that out to everybody's attention. I think that's it. If anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Bryce. And you'll also be hitting, I'm not sure if any of the county members are going, but the PA Trails and Greenway Summit next week as well. So a lot of great sessions and workshops there. And there's some key things to learn, Bryce can bring back, and we can have those as discussion items potentially for the future Active Transportation Committee meetings as well. So if any of you are hitting that, look for Bryce and Scranton next week.
Hey, Bryce, just Frank here. And if you need someone to test that website once you get it up and running, someone to crash it, I am known to the IT world as a guy who can basically mess up anything. So.
Yeah, no, I'll be in touch. Yeah.
Thank you, Bryce. Thanks, Frank, for being the guinea pig crasher. Next on the agenda item L. Typically, the next to last meeting of the year, we put some proposed dates for the following year before you. We'll have them acted on at our final meeting in November, but this is what our first take was, realizing the first half of the year we have that core kind of activity for the TIP. The draft to be reviewed twice, and then for the adoption of the draft in the June meeting. So that's what we kind of follow, some time to develop it, get the first draft in February, first week of February, revised draft in April, and then June 14th for the adoption of the TIP after we close the comment period and run through all the analysis of that. I will acknowledge we do our normal outreach with Lori at the County Planning Directors Association through CCAP. She identified that February date of the 2nd might conflict if they follow the normal schedule of the group, and it's a virtual meeting, but she said they could maybe look at switching that. So just so Greg and Link, I know you guys are pretty involved with that group of the county planning directors in particular. We rearranged our August date to avoid what they would likely have, but that February one was kind of key for the tip development. So if you're working with her, if you're seeing those on the agenda to set the official ones, and you think, no, we should avoid it, let us know. We could probably push it out a week for what we bring to you in November.
I think we have our next meeting with the 3rd of November.
Sounds about right.
We should be able to bounce some of these off the group and find out where we.
Great. Yeah, those are quarterly, and she said if you follow this year's, that February 2nd would be a conflict.
Mhm.
I'm not sure, what time do your meetings start with that group? Is it morning, early morning, or?
Usually 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that would overlap our 9:30s for them. Yeah.
And it's difficult to be in state college and here at the same time.
Right, you can't occupy 2 places.
Haven't cloned me yet.
Yeah, she had indicated over email that maybe the group would be open to changing that one, but if they can't, if there's other conflicts, you need us to move ours, just let us know as soon as you guys kind of have information for the November 17th meeting. We could probably push that out a week.
Yeah, I mean, I know the February 2nd meeting here is gonna be important. I have no idea what the agenda is gonna look like there, so.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah, otherwise, that's what we're looking at for our normal 6 meetings a year. If we need to add something for certain reviews, we can do so. But for shouldn't be any set aside, like for this year, it's our special add-on meeting in October to review and have that open session with the sponsors of those to have a Q&A and back and forth. So most likely it'd be a 6 meeting schedule for 2024, and keep our Fridays, keep our 9:30 start to about 11:30 for the closing, and continue with our hybrid mode would be our intention. But yeah, if you have a chance to go back, if you see something that definitely is bad for a large number of you, just let us know and we can take a look at what we'll bring in November. So that was our first foray into the 2024 dates. And our thinking is we'll probably send like a calendar invite for each of those so you can have a hold go right on your calendar. And then what we'll do is still continue our probably 2 weeks out, share the agenda, and about a week out, share the packet. But we'll probably change to at least get the Outlook scheduling email off that you can just accept and add the adopted MPO dates to your calendars. There are no questions on the dates. Member forum is next. Just real briefly, I'll hit a couple of these to start on page 87, and then open it for any other discussion items from the group. The stop hopper service from Rapid Transit on page 87. We've had updates from them about the service and how it's working and the zones. There's a meeting early next week to talk about the future of that and kind of local maps that will be required, so we can share more that we learn through the discussions with Rapid Transit and other stakeholders. But yeah, that pilot's been working well, especially in that Sealands Grove to Sunbury zone. It's been very popular, I think. So hopefully that can continue, and we will provide any information that we learn coming out of next week's meeting with Rapid Transit. On page 88, Gene Peroshniak brought to our attention last meeting the new U.S. Department of Transportation discretionary grants dashboard. So that links there as well. Again, this time if you want to click on it and access that, pretty good overviews. And then the launch pad, kind of some more customized information and some of the technical support capabilities and resources through the U.S. Department of Transportation there as well. And you can kind of see information on those that have been through successfully these various discretionary grants through that launch pad as well. On the electric vehicle side of things, we had shared the approvals from the first round of the statewide NEVI, as it's called, formula program, and PennDOT's looking to open a round 1A this fall with about $20 million available. So we had a couple of different fuel depots and such along Interstate 80 that were approved in the first round. So potentially we'll have some more of those that are on the alternative fuels corridor submitted for round 1A. And then PennDOT has a new municipal electric vehicle charging infrastructure case studies report that was published. That link is there for your review. You can see how other areas across the state have been doing some things innovatively maybe on the design or funding side of things for EV charging stations. And then DEP is hosting 2 virtual workshops in September and October on electric vehicles as well, and that registration link is in your packet on page 88. Page 89, just note that the Rural Travel Assistance Program is still open through September 28th. That was the first come, first serve, one of those kind of rare technical assistance grant programs. So that's something we want to plug again before the deadline. And Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods is still open as well through the end of September, where you have facilities that kind of divide communities and either planning or infrastructure projects that could address that and get them to their daily needs. The local share account through DCD is open. That's a pretty broad program and I think pretty easy to apply for. So I wanted to highlight that. If you have needs for the local share account through DCD on page 90, that closes on November 30th. And we had several from our region approved last time, and sometimes those involve transportation items, not just water and sewer and that sort. Mentioned about the strategic plan, but coming out of today's meeting and next week's conversation with Gant Fleming, we'll be sure to get you information as soon as possible on any scheduling or any surveying related to the strategic plan update. And that is all I wanted to touch on from the interest items. Anything else in general interest items or anything for the good of the order that anybody would like to discuss here today?
I didn't realize there was gonna be a meeting this coming week or whenever, Bryce, you're going up to Scranton, but the Center County has actually just had their first steering committee meeting for the creation of our inland open space plan. So that's something that we'll, I'm sure, be in touch with the the Middle Susquehanna bicycle and pedestrian groups and stuff like that. But it's in the works.
Great. Is that just countywide or are you partnering with them?
Countywide. Yep.
Thank you, Lincoln. Any other activities or goings on that anybody wants to share under the member forum? I don't think there's anything in the chat as well that was shared. Just I did share the links there that I mentioned earlier for the electric vehicle accelerator program and also the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Program. So those are out there in the chat pod if anybody wants to refer to those, since those were late break-in for today's meeting. Well, if there's nothing further, I think we'd look for a motion to adjourn and reconvene on November 17th.
So moved, Frank Hampton.
Thank you, Frank. Do you have a second?
Yes.
Great, thank you for the second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thanks everyone for your time. Have a great weekend.
You too, guys. Take care. Be safe.
Thank you.